Bridges puts up a three. Won't go. Rebound box.
Now head over in this direction. Gone to three.
Tie game with 5 seconds remaining. The impossible has happened.
Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler.
Anthony for three. Puts it in. Bridges. Oh my God. Oh, what? Oh, blocked by James. LeBron James with the rejection. Curry way downtown. Bang! Bang!
And we are back, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Cam's Corner. Today, joining me, one of the co-hosts, weekdays 10 to 2 on the Zolak and Bertrand show on 98.5 The Sports Hub. Rob Hardy, Poole. Rob, how are you doing, man? I appreciate you taking the time to join me.
Good, Cam. I'm happy to do it. How are you doing?
Not bad. I was very glad that, again, you took the time to join me. And again, for the fans watching, the nickname Hardy, I asked you on Friday where that nickname comes from. So we'll start with that. Where does the nickname Hardy originate from?
Okay, I'm going to give you the mercifully short 30-second version. Freshman year, Michigan State. I was kind of in a jock dorm, and there were a bunch of dudes in there who were very intimidating for a 5 foot nothing, 100 and nothing pound freshman. One of them thought my name was Rod as opposed to Rob.
Yeah.
And they'd see me in the halls of the dorm and be like, "Hey, what's up there, Rod?" And I just say, "Hi." Nothing. And there's one dude in particular, he started calling me Hot Rod. He's like, "Hey, what's going on there, Hot Rod?" And I didn't bother correcting him. And Hot Rod became Hot Rod Hearts, which is a song from Robbie Dupree, like an old 70s song, which is even before our time, even though I am old. But this dude's like, "Yeah, there goes Hot Rod Hearts." Hot Rod Hearts got shortened to Hearts. Hearts became Hardy. This happened within 6 months of my freshman year at Michigan State 33 years ago.
And it's stuck with you.
I've been Hardy ever since.
Wow. So, I'm going to get into the Sports Hub questions, of course, but when you first got to the Sports Hub, did they already know you as Hardy, or was it Rob?
Yeah. I mean, everybody in college, started calling me Hardy. And when I first started doing radio shows in college, and I started doing radio in high school. My high school had a radio station. But when I started doing shows in college, I just kind of went by Hardy. It was like the Hardy Show. And when I got my first, I call it real job. I had a couple of paying radio jobs around Lansing, Michigan, but my first show that I did on my own, like an overnight show on the alternative station in East Lansing, I went by Hardy. And that's what I've always gone by Hardy on the air. That goes back to February of 1994 when I first started doing overnights on this alternative station in Lansing. And so ever since then, when I've been on the air, I've just been Hardy. It's just whatever. That's what most people call me. It was the easiest thing to remember. And it wasn't, I don't know. I never gave it a whole lot of thought, quite frankly, but it just kind of, that's what I went with, and it stuck.
Yeah, Friday, I was a little bit right. I knew it had something to do with music, because I know you're a big music guy and things like that. But
it was this one dude. His name is Jason Sorokin. I'll never forget that guy. He was lived on my 6 West Wilson, Michigan State University, and it was I think we have that guy to blame or to thank for my nickname that is stuck for all these years.
No, right, for sure. And for the people that only know you from the Sports Hub, what other things are you involved in as far as broadcasting sports media, journalism, and things like that?
I mean, I've always been a radio guy, going back to high school, and mostly, in music radio, rock stations. I mean, I started on a country station as my first paid job, New Country 102 WILS, today's hot country favorites back to back. And I would do I'd run the Saturday morning syndication show, or I would, occasionally get to crack the mic. I also did a smart shopper show. That was my first real paid radio job, where I would go in for 1 hour a day for this AM country station. There was an AM and an FM there, and we would sell things that were given to the station by advertisers. So if they're, Lansing Hair and Nail Salon, they'd give us free manicures. And a $10 value, you can have it for $5 today on the Smart Shopper show. And people would call in and buy this stuff. And it was a way for the radio station to make some money, non-traditional revenue, NTR. So, I started doing that, but I love doing radio. I always loved doing radio in high school and in college. And I took whatever radio job I could get, whether it was at that AM country or the FM country. That lasted about 6 months before I got into like rock radio. And, from there, I mostly did music radio. I did a couple of, like side gigs here and there. When I moved from Lansing to New Mexico, I started working for a minor league hockey team there, but I was playing music in the stadium, during games. I did the same thing for like a minor league soccer team. So, I always, loved sports and I was a fan, but, my job in radio had mostly to do with music. And I would just pick up side gigs here and there that, had like a sports angle to it. Then I moved to Las Vegas and I had a couple other gigs around there, like hosting events for, kind of like on the fringe of sports. There was they got the Sky Zone trampoline parks here in and around Boston. That guy was from LA and he wanted to create this whole new sport that was kind of like a cross between lacrosse and soccer. And it was played in a Sky Zone trampoline park. He hired me to come in and like MC one of his events. So I was like always on the fringe, just kind of like, nipping at, sports angles and stuff. And it wasn't until I had moved to Boston for a job at WBCN, doing rock radio here in Boston. And it wasn't until BCN blew up and they created the Sports Hub that I had my first real chance to do, sports radio and get into it full time. And that was not a sure thing. I mean, when they created the Sports Hub, it was me, it was Fred and Rich, it was Dan O'Brien. We were the old BCN guys, and I was told anyway that I could audition and get like a part-time job on the Sports Hub. Fred and Rich went from mornings on BCN to mornings on the Sports Hub, but it was touch and go for a while. It's ended up working out and it's been great because now, in addition to doing the Sports Hub, I do a pre and post for patriots.com. I've been doing that for, I think, 4 or 5 years now. I've been working for the New England Revolution, doing, very brief, but, it's important to, to give some legitimacy and some airtime to the New England Revolution, doing, pre, half, and post game shows. I've been doing that for, I don't know, maybe like 7 years now, something like that. And I do the golf show on the Sports Hub. I've hosted some golf shows on TV for this TV show called Golfing the World. So, it's just, it kind of goes with my mantra, Cam. It's like my default answer is yes. If somebody asks me to do something, I'm grateful enough, and I really am. I feel lucky enough to be asked in the first place. So my default answer is yes, thank you, please, and thank you. I'll do that, and then decide later if it really works out, if I'm any good at it, or they like me doing it, or if it's something we want to continue doing. But yeah, it's for the most part, just saying yes to a lot of stuff has allowed me to do a lot of different stuff, and I enjoy all of it. I really do.
Definitely. And like the first day I was on the Sports Hub, like my very first day when I was like, an intern, and we talked about like Stone Freeman, who has been like a huge connection for me and a huge help for me throughout like my career. And he's taught me, like you said as well, like just say yes. You know what I mean? Any opportunity that comes your way, it's going to outlet your name to just become, bigger and bigger, and more opportunities are just going to come your way. So when, I got the opportunity to come to the Sports Hub to intern, I was like, it's an hour and a half away from where I live, but I'm going to do it because it's going to help it's the first internship, but it's going to help my career, get off to the start that it needs to be.
Yeah.
And
yeah. I would say like, I wouldn't be as concerned about like growing your brand or doing things, for your, business. I honestly, Cam, it should be as much about finding out what it is that you like to do. And yeah, can you get paid to do it?
Right.
And you really don't know until you try a lot of different things. Excuse me, I still do a lot of music radio.
Mm-hmm.
I work at a station in our building for Rock 92.9, and I do a few hours in the afternoon there, and I do satellite radio every single day. I'm on a satellite radio station doing music radio. But I wouldn't have known that I like to do any of this stuff until you do it. And it really wasn't, I'm trying to think if I ever, I had a notion. It's like, no, this would be good for the Hardy brand. I'm like, what the hell is that? I
Yeah.
don't, I don't think that I have a brand. I don't think of me being in those terms because, I'm not like, one of the A-list guys. I'm not one of the, the main hosts. I'm just a guy who likes to work and I like doing things in and around, you know, media, radio, TV, sports, music. So the more that I do, the more I get to do, and the more likely I am to find something that I really like doing. Excuse me. And right now I'm lucky enough to have found like 3 or 4 things that I currently do, and I like doing all of them. So it's been just, I think, good personal sense for me, and from an economic standpoint, I guess, just to say yes to all these different things so that you can find stuff that you like and make some money at it too.
Exactly. And like you said, with like the Hardy brand and like, like for me, like branding myself, like like if that comes along the way, like it doesn't hurt, you know what I mean? So it's like,
Oh,
if
I guess
the hard work pays off. Like I'm just thinking, like in my perspective, it'd be like my hard work's paying off. One, I'm doing what I love, but this is coming along with it. I mean, it's not,
Think about the guys who are really good at what they do, though, Cam.
Yeah.
Like think about guys like Felger. Think about, guys like, or Maz, even Zoe. I don't think Zoe sits around, and I know Felger doesn't. I don't think these guys sit around thinking about their brand,
No, right.
They,
Yeah,
they
exactly.
just,
Yeah.
Zoe calls games for the Patriots and he's really good at it with no thought to his brand. It's just, he's a football guy and he understands the game. Felger and Maz, they host a talk show every day that has been phenomenally successful for a lot of years. Felger doesn't think about his brand. I don't think so. Ask Beetle, who's a great talk show host, if they think about their brand. If you're busy and you're doing something and you're giving that your full attention, I don't think you have a lot of time or energy left over to be really thinking about your brand. I something tells me that people who spend a lot of time thinking about their brand are probably not all that busy doing something that is either worthwhile or meaningful to them in the first place. I'm thinking about my brand. Who cares? Who cares? Brand. I don't know. It's just, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. When I hear athletes talking about it too, it's like, oh, it's good for my brand to be in this market. What'd be good for you is to be really good at playing your sport. That would be good. That would be good. That's the best thing for your brand, quite frankly. And if that's not the most important thing to you, okay, then go find that. But if you're concerned about your brand, then I think your concerns are in the wrong place.
No, right. Yeah, that's definitely a good way to look at it. And that's how more so, like you said, just more of like the things that you can do just to outlet yourself. If you love it, like just keep going with it. And I completely agree with you on that. And going back to a little bit about your career, I know you mentioned before, again, you went to Michigan State, received a bachelor's degree in journalism. Again, before I get into the questions about like your first job opportunities and things like that, where are you originally from, and like where did that passion for sports come from for you? Because I know, again, you said you started really with music, but where did the passion for sports grow for you growing up?
It wasn't from playing them because I stink at everything. I mean, it's like I can get by on the golf course and throwing a frisbee, and that's about it. No, just growing up outside Detroit, in like the northern suburbs. Born in Rochester, Michigan, and grew up in Troy, Michigan. I went to school in Auburn Heights, which is now called Auburn Hills, but it was near the Silver Dome, where the Lions used to play. And yeah, I was a fan of, the teams, like I think most kids are growing up. I was a Lions fan. I was a Tigers fan. I was a big Pistons fan when I was a kid. And that's probably my first real love, I would say, were those mid 80s, late 80s Pistons teams that I really, followed and lived and died with. And it's so difficult to spend as much time watching the Celtics. And actually, it hurts me to like this team. It does, because it's, growing up watching those great Pistons Celtics battles, it's an odd feeling to actually, have some some emotional tie to the Celtics now, which I kind of do. I mean, I like this team, but that's where it started for me, just as a fan of those teams in that area. And then at Michigan State, becoming a fan of Michigan State basketball and football, which I wasn't that huge of a fan of, in high school, but going to school there, you become a fan. So yeah, it was always something that I just kind of, witnessed. I stunk at everything, man. I used to think I was a decent basketball player, even though I didn't play past 8th grade. And I knew I wasn't good enough to play in a high school, but it was funny getting to Michigan State and like going out and playing like IM ball or just playing like playground ball in the courts outside the dorms. I would go out there and play against guys like you who could actually play in high school but weren't good enough to play like at a Big Ten school. Like, holy crap, I can't play this game at all. Like
Yeah.
zero. I thought I could play a little bit. You can't play. Like,
Yeah.
stop it. But I like, it's some of the best sports fans in the world are guys who absolutely stink at playing the sports, but you know them, you watch them, you like them, you're engaged in it, you've got some emotional attachment to it, even if you can't play. And that was kind of me. So, getting into the sports angle of it was a long time coming in my career, but I was always a fan, and I think that's a good place to start from.
Yeah, exactly. And like, again, at the end of the day, I'm a fan as well. And not that it so much for you, because you guys are on the air every day. We're talking about it in the NBA Finals with the Celtics, but I'm a huge New York fan. I love the Knicks, I love the Giants, the Yankees, but I'm a Bruins fan for hockey. So it's like it was tough watching them in the finals. All my friends are Celtics fans, but we'd always go out, watch the games and everything like that. So it's like, they kind of grew on me. So I see where you're coming from at that point. And as far as like playing days and stuff, I really wanted to be a college athlete. Of course, I wanted to play at my school at Rick in Rhode Island College. It was D3. But again, I was working out with one of my friends the other day who plays football at Stonehill in Easton. Is a D1 school now, and we're doing like all these conditioning workouts. And I'm like, nah, I'm not built for this. I haven't done this in 2 years. I'm like, just remembered from like my senior year of high school was the last time I did true like conditioning, and that was like 2-3 years ago. So I'm like, yeah, there's no way I would have. This is the right career path for me that I'm going down. It was, I made the right decision.
But it's, you can be, it's so lame and it sounds like such a loser mentality, but it's like, all right, if you can't play, you can be the best fan that you can be. Like, I was living in New Mexico. I had moved from Lansing, in this rock radio job to work at another alternative rock station in Albuquerque back in 1996. And the next year, the Red Wings made it to the Stanley Cup final. And, we were watching every game there in Albuquerque. And I was an awful hockey player myself. I played both inline and a little bit of ice, but never as a kid. I was just, because again, I was like stunk. But as a fan, my buddy calls me from Detroit and he's like, Hardy, you got to make it back for game 4. The Wings are going to sweep the Flyers. You got to do it. You got to make it back here. And I was making no money, and I was, I was watching all these games at whatever bar we could find them that would show the Red Wings games. And I said, fine, I'm going to do it. And I maxed out my credit card to buy like a red-eye Southwest flight from Albuquerque back to Detroit, and ended up essentially sneaking into Joe Louis Arena for game 4, where they did win the Stanley Cup. So
Wow.
and, that was one of my like great sports memories and moments. And I think about it, I'm like, yeah, I might be crap at playing all these things, but that's a real fan move right there. Like essentially going into debt just so you can hop on a red eye, fly overnight, and not even having a ticket in hand, just to be in the town and hopefully get into the game, which I did. And, it's stuff like that you won't be able to do that again. Won't have that same, like, now that I'm like older and, family and a job, it's like, well, I've got like a security net to where if you really wanted to go do one of those things, you could. It may not be the smartest thing financially, but you're not going to put yourself at real risk by doing it. That was a risk. Dude, it's like I banged out of work and like, maxed out a credit card just to buy a plane ticket so I could go watch a hockey game. Like, how dumb is that? But it felt great doing it at the time. And it was like, no, things like that, you'll never have a chance to do again. I'm glad I did it.
Exactly. And like this guy with the Celtics being, in the NBA Finals, just most recently, a nosebleed seat was like $1,200 probably. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like some people like that do that. Like me and my friends were gonna do it, and I'm like, I'm not really like a Celtics fan. I'm not gonna spend $1,200 on a ticket, but it's like that's a once in a lifetime opportunity. Yeah, exactly.
There's a guy who works at the golf course I play at a lot, and he went to game 4, and he spent like $1,200 on the ticket, and he was asking me about it, and I'm like, dude, I don't know, man. I'm like, if it were game 7,
Yeah.
maybe. But I even told him, I said, you're going to spend all that money on a ticket. I said, they could lose. You realize you're not guaranteeing yourself. And the same thing could have happened to me with the Red Wings and the Flyers. Like they could have lost the game. And the story isn't nearly as good, but at least they had a chance to close it out on home ice, which they did. Like, that wasn't going to happen for game 4 at the Garden a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, what
Series is still going on. Exactly. It's like, especially even game 6 too. It's like, yeah, you won game 6 and you're going to game 7, but like the series is still going on. Like the Celtics still could lose, and they evidently lost in 6, but
right.
It's just,
you Cam, you got to pick your spots, man. You got to
exactly.
pick your spots for stuff like that.
Exactly. Going back to your career again, looking more at Michigan State. What more like programs did you get into as far as like the media and I said you were big on the radio. So did you do like just radio, or were you like more? I know your major was journalism, like you wrote sports. Did you like broadcast like sports play-by-play and stuff like that, or?
I didn't do any writing. Well, I mean, a lot of writing in classes. I was going to be a telecom major, and my advisor advised me against it. He said, look, for telecom, there's a lot of technical stuff you're going to learn. And I thought maybe I wanted to be like in TV news is what I was really thinking about doing. And he's like, no, what you need to do is learn how to write. You need a journalism degree. And with a journalism degree, you can do a lot of different things. Telecom, maybe not so much, it may have served me well, but instead I majored in journalism with an emphasis in broadcast, and ended up learning how to write both for the eye and for the ear. And God, Cam, it was so long ago. I'm sure I wrote stuff for like the student paper or something. I really can't remember. I haven't done any play-by-plays still to this day. Not anything like meaningful that I could point to. And by the way, I've offered up my services to the Ultimate League. I think I could do it could be a pretty good color analyst for Ultimate Frisbee. No, or golf for that matter. They tend to, choose.
I can see golf. Yeah.
Yeah, they tend to choose guys who are actually good golfers for those jobs. So yeah, it's tough to grab one. It's very Seinfeld. Like George wants to be like a play-by-play guy for the Yankees. Yeah, they tend to go with former players for that, George.
Right.
So I don't know if that's in the cards for me doing any play-by-play. But yeah, Michigan State did a lot of like TV news and stuff like that, and trying to learn all that. And I got a glimpse of it, and I thought, I don't think this is really for me. It doesn't seem like all that much fun. I was having a ton of fun on the student radio station, and when I got done with school, I like tended bar during school, and I DJ'd and stuff. I'm like, well, I'm gonna work in radio for a while and see how this goes. And it might be smarter and more grown-up job to, really go for like the TV news aspect of it. But I didn't like it. It seemed like a lot of BS. And I'm like, as long as we're just going to be, goofing around about a bunch of stuff, might as well do it in a place where it's kind of allowed and encouraged. And in alternative radio at the time, that was it. It's like, no, man, you don't have to put on any disguises. You don't have to put on any airs. Just be yourself. I'm like, okay, good. I can go do that. So that's what I ended up doing. But having that training and all the classes and all the stuff that I took in writing, that's huge. Because that factors into everything in life. Writing for the eye and writing for the ear. And when you're writing copy for someone to read, that's one thing. Right? When you're writing copy that you're going to speak, that's another skill set. And you need to have them both in this business. And and I got both of those, out of my, classes and my degree from Michigan State.
Yeah, right. And like going back to like your career path, like you said, like your main focus was to be in radio. You wanted to be in radio.
Yeah.
And going back to earlier what you said, like just saying yes to every opportunity that comes your way. My main goal is I want to be like a broadcaster, and I know how hard that is, like how hard that field is to get into. So again, like I mentioned earlier, like I want to get into anything I can just to build a resume for myself. Like I did this, and like I love everything I've done so far. I've loved like I've like so far at the internship at the Sports Hub has been like amazing. The play-by-play I did at my old school, like the paper I wrote for, everything I've done, like I've loved. Like I don't know like something specific that I want to stick with. Well, like I said, play-by-play is what I want to stick with, but where is that going to take me? Because like that is like I said, a tough thing to get into. So
one of the best things I've done, Cam, is like moved around. And I know
Yeah,
other guys
exactly.
who have done it, who have, and some of the guys working in this town now have, bopped around different parts of the country, doing minor league teams in El Paso. Go somewhere else. You might have to work a second job in order to make ends meet, all that stuff. It's a great part of the process for me that I wouldn't give up for anything. I mean, I moved to Albuquerque because the job was going to pay. I think I was making $18,000 a year in East Lansing, and the job in Albuquerque was going to pay me 25 grand a year. A, I thought I was rich, and B, um, I still struggled, of course, but that struggle is great. It makes you hungry. It makes you do good work. It makes you, focus in on what you're doing so you can get that next job in a bigger market. And that's the type of thing. It's like, I want to be play by play for the Celtics. Well, I'm sure you do, but
Yeah.
they're probably not going to give you that job right now if Gorman decides to step down tomorrow. It's and nor should they. There are other guys out there who are like working at it, and they are hungry for it, and they have put in their, not just their time, but they have honed their skill in other markets away from home, where they put themselves out there on the line. And it's like, it's, look, you got to be good to keep your job to survive. Otherwise, you're going to have to tuck tail and move back home. And you don't want to do that. You're out there trying to, make something happen, and moving away and getting out of your comfort zone and immersing yourself in a job like that. If that's what you think you want to do, there's real value in doing just that.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of started my podcast. Like, I know I don't have like a huge following. That's not like my goal to get like a huge following. It's just my main goal is to just meet people and to learn what their experiences have been. Like if I didn't have that internship, I don't know if I would like have you on, or like, if I didn't reach out to certain people that I did. Like, I had Tim Sinclair, who's the PA announcer for the Chicago Bulls, on. Like, I just sent him an email. Well, I saw some of his videos on like TikTok and like Instagram, and I'm like, oh, like I've never heard of him. And like, he's accomplished so many things, and I'm like, let's see if he answers. So a couple weeks go by and he answers. So I'm like, if I can do that with him, I can do that with a ton of people. It doesn't hurt to send an email and to offer. So like, again, going back to like the moving experience, like that's how you outlet yourself, is just outletting yourself to different opportunities. And I completely agree with that 100%. Now to like all the job opportunities that you had, and back in 2017 when you started at the Sports Hub, how did the job opportunity come to you for 98.5?
It was 09. I had moved to Boston late 04, early 05, worked on BCN for a few years. And, they told us, like, look, WBCN is going away. The Heritage Rock station in Boston, it's going to go away. In this very studio is going to be a sports talk station. And they said, look, you're essentially, you're fired. Okay. But you can audition to have a job on the Sports Hub. We think maybe you could do this job. And I did a couple of auditions in a different studio down the road. I did a fake show with Dan Roach. I did one, and Dan and I are friends to this day, and we just played golf together here not long ago. He's a great guy. I don't think he wanted to do the sports talk radio thing. I mean, he's an established TV sports guy. He kind of had his gig. The other guy I auditioned with was Jerry Trupiano, who was a former voice of the Red Sox. And Troop and I hit it off, and we started doing Hardy and Troop. They said, okay, we like the way this audition sounds. So I went from being an on-air rock and roll DJ on a Wednesday in August back in 2009 to Saturday morning, 8 a.m., 4-hour sports talk show, Hardy and Jerry Trupiano, go. And it was, look, I don't know if they knew it was going to work. I didn't know if it was going to work, but I knew I wasn't going to, allow the opportunity to pass me by. Plus, Cam, I needed a job. I needed the job, even if it was only part-time. I had been a full-time radio employee for years, but that this was the first time I hadn't been, fully employed in my adult life. And, after college anyway, and it sucked, but I started doing it, and Troop was good to work with a guy who had never done, sports talk before. And we did Hardy and Troop together for, oh man, I guess 8 years, maybe. We were on the air together for that amount of time. God, I think so. and it was good. And once, I started doing that, I started filling in on headlines for like middays for Tangway and Zolak a little bit at first. And, we were all kind of bouncing around until we all kind of settled into our roles. And it was settled in pretty early on in the Sports Hub life, where I think it was like late fall 2009, where I started doing, the headlines regularly on the midday show for Tangway and Zolak, which became Gresh and Zo, which then became Zolak and Bertrand. And that's where I've been ever since. And yeah, continue doing weekend shows for a while. I started the golf show in 2013. So that's now in its 10th year. And that was it. It was just a matter of convincing them, yep, I can do that. And I'll do an audition and I'll try out some, some different partners, see how it sounds. And then, they gave us a shot on that Saturday morning, the first week the Sports Hub launched, and just kind of went and grew from there.
Right. Yeah. When I said 2017, I meant like that's when Zolak and Bertrand was introduced, correct? In 2017,
if you say so,
or something like that.
Sounds about right. I think it was earlier than that. I think it was, if I had to guess, it was probably closer to like 15 or something like
15.
That. I think
yeah.
so.
So yeah, since the start of the show in 2015 or around that time,
yeah.
How is your like chemistry and built over the years with Zo and Beetle and the production crew that you guys have had too?
Oh, I mean, I don't even know if I can like describe it. We all know each other so well. Jim Louth was our producer for so long, and now he's one of the bosses. So it's good to still have him, around. And with T-Bone, with Tom Morgan, he's been around for so long. We all know each other's moods. We all know each other. We can communicate stuff to each other just with a glance. At this point, which is important when you're on the radio or you've got a guest on the phone, and you can just kind of like, you can read the energy in that room between the three of us or four of us or five of us now, just because we've been doing it together for so long. And, I love those guys. We all get along, which is odd for some shows. Not all shows get along all the time. We all get along. We all hate each other certain days. Sometimes two guys hate the other guy, I'm sure there are days when both Beetle and Zo can't stand me or whatever I'm bringing to the table. But, once you're doing it for so long and having some success with it, and you just, you learn each other's like moods and rhythms and everything else. And I wouldn't have it any other way, quite frankly. I mean, it's essentially family at this point. You spend as much time with your work family, when you're in it for this long, sometimes, as you do your actual family. So you better get along, and you better learn to read each other. Otherwise, going to work is going to be miserable, and it's never miserable going to work.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you guys have spent like a lot of time at like certain events, meeting athletes, coaches, talking to coaches, and huge guys in like the sports industry. Talk a little bit about that. Like what kind of events you guys have been like invited to, and what's it like talking to like these kinds of guys in studio too? Like I know we just saw Ray Borkin. We talked to Ime Udoka a couple of times. Talk a little bit about that too.
I will give you one story, because we've been to Super Bowls and we talk with coaches and all this stuff. I'll give you one example. It was a fundraiser, I think, for Best Buddies, and Beetle, Zo, and I were all there with a couple other people, and Tom Brady was there. And I'd met Brady, a time or two before, but Zo knows him quite well. So we go up. Brady sees us when he comes into the room, and we all kind of like, and we all go over. And Zo's like, "Hey, yeah, Tom, I think you've met Hardy before, but he's the one who always makes fun of your wife." I'm like, Jesus Christ. And Brady's got this like 1,000-yard stare and smile. He looks at me like, "Is that right?" Like, don't try your Tom Brady, or don't try your Tom Cruise like Scientology smile stare thing at me. It's not gonna work, dude. I never say anything about your wife.
Yeah,
that's come on, whatever.
That's kind of cool though. I mean, if I was introduced to Tom Brady and he said that was the first thing that came out of Zo's mouth, I don't.
Yeah,
handled it better than I would have, but
yeah,
that's pretty cool. And we've got coming down to the last couple of minutes. Like I said, the Zoom like time limit thing, but. To kind of end it off, what was one of your like most memorable moments at the Sports Hub like over the years?
I mean, being at the Super Bowl in Houston, the 28-3 comeback, and that was where a lot of stuff came together. This is gonna sound like I thought about this ahead of time, but this just now occurred to me. I was working for the Sports Hub, and I was also working for the Patriots. And we did this Drive for Five bus to Houston, where Big Jim Murray and I rode on this big tour bus all across the country and did fan rallies in every city along the way. And I was doing satellite radio on the bus, while, we were getting down there, and it, culminated in this game that looked like it was going to go horribly wrong. And they ended up winning, and we were all there together. And it was just like everything coming together at once, my job with the Sports Hub and working for the Patriots and doing my satellite radio along the way. And it was everything all together in 1 week. And, the greatest ending to the greatest Super Bowl game of all time. So that's probably my wrap it all up story that I would use.
That's awesome, Hardy. And again, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. I always ask everyone at the end of the podcast, what'd you think of Camp's Corner and whom might you want to see as a future guest along the line?
I would like to see you hold a mirror up to yourself and interview yourself, because as good as this was, it could only be better if it was all you. Hold up a mirror, interview yourself. See how that goes.
Thanks, Hardy. I appreciate it so much. I'll let you know when this is out, and I'll be in touch. I'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, man.